Welcome to another episode of Meta Report, where we talk about the recent meta changes, what heroes are the most broken at the moment, as well as good items and good builds to go for. I'm your host Deathy. Let's get started. Let's start with talking about overall meta changes. There are two big things that I'd like to talk about. First being the new urn. So the new urn has a comeback mechanic which allows you to turn it in on your own side of the map if you're behind. You need to be behind by 10% in order for this mechanic to come into play. What I would recommend is that if you're behind at 10%, that you go for the urn, as it's a very easy way to come back into the game. So make sure you're prioritizing this. On the other end, if you are ahead by more than 10%, try to grab the urn in order to deny it from the enemy team, because it's their easiest way to come back into the game. The next meta change is walkers. Walkers get absolutely shredded at 14 minutes now, as they have minus resistance to players. Make sure you abuse this and don't be afraid to solo push walkers at 14 minutes. You can even do so a little bit earlier, as long as you have some decent gun damage. Wraith in particular shreds walkers in seconds. Let's get into the meta heroes. To no surprise to anyone, Talon is at the top of the list. When I saw the recent Talon changes, I knew that he was going to be strong, but I wasn't sure exactly how strong, and I thought that the weakness of him being a sniper was going to overcome potentially the changes, because snipers are always very weak and they're always very squishy. And if you go into the air, then you're kind of making yourself a target to lots of different things, including Yamatos, lashes, etc. However, it seems that the buffs are more than enough to counteract the inherent weaknesses of the character, and that the character is being highly prioritized even in the competitive scene. I've seen a ton of teams first pick or first ban Talon in Europe and in North America, and this hero is currently very strong. The build that I'd recommend you guys use for this is Salty Spirit Talon. Now, full disclosure, Salty is my teammate, so I'm a little bit biased, but I think it's a great build, and I think that you guys will have a lot of success with it. As far as anything you need to imbue, for example, Surge of Power or Quicksilver Reload, make sure you put that on your charged shot. Some of these items might be a little bit more optional. For example, you could skip Restorative Locket if you're having a really good game and you don't need defensives, but overall it's important that you don't skip too many defensives, because Talon is still quite vulnerable to getting gone on, and so you need some survivability. Now go dominate the skies with this build. Next on the list, although this hero is a little bit less prioritized in competitive play, is Vindicta. Vindicta is kind of back on the menu for Vindicta players, and she seems pretty strong. Even in ranked, even at a very high rank, she seems to have good impact. The build that I'd recommend you guys follow is the MikaelS Spirit build, 25th October. Just as a reminder, I'll leave in the description, I'll leave all the build codes that you guys can go follow them. Basically, this build revolves around Spirit for your crow, and your snipe still seems to be the best way, and now Spirit scales your gun damage either way, so you're going to be able to do a lot of damage, but the crow is still a ridiculously strong ability, and the snipe as well. Now let's talk about Mirage a little bit. So this hero is already pretty strong in my opinion. I don't think that he needed a buff at all, but Valve went ahead and buffed his third skill, and they also buffed his scarabs a little bit. So overall, they just gave him more buffs, and now you have better visibility when you TP with your Traveler, etc. Feels very strong at the moment, and there are multiple builds that work on him. For example, you can build a little bit more around your Jin's Mark, or you can build more around your scarabs, or you can still do the Echo Shard Tornado things. There's a lot of things that work on him. At the moment, what I'd recommend you guys do is do a bit more of a gun-focused build, focused around the Scarabs and the Jin's Mark. My build for this is Deathy's Gun Mirage. I'll leave the code in the description. If you guys want a different take on this from shhhhh, a European player, there's also the build, which his name is shhhhh, but his username is usually. So you can follow this, and it's a very different take on it with a lot more utility items early on, and just kinetic dash and long range. I've seen quite a bit of people buy long range on this hero, and it seems pretty strong as well. So I'd recommend you guys experiment and see what you prefer and what you like for yourselves. I'll leave the code to both builds in the description. Mirage just feels like one of the most broken characters at the moment, in my opinion, other than Talon and maybe Vindicta, but I think he's stronger than Vindicta. The evasion from the tornado, combined with the minus bullet resist with the scarabs, and just the overall insane damage you can get with Jin's Mark, just make this character like almost impossible to beat in 1v1 situations, and he has a global TP on top of that, so he's very good at split pushing. Let's talk a little bit about Wraith. So we seem to be in somewhat of a on-hit meta. What I mean by that is that on-hit items such as Tesla bullets or Siphon bullets or things like that seem to be quite strong, and Wraith makes really good use of that. So the build we're looking at is the Tank Wraith by RinaVX. This build basically just allows you to kind of get in there as Wraith, have decent farming potential and damage output with Tesla bullets, as well as just having a ton of resistances and a huge damage output with Quicksilver Reload, Swift Striker, Intensifying Mag, and Siphon bullets. Siphon bullets is really the biggest power spike in this build because it gives you a ton of bullet resist as well as just overall damage, because if you buy it, you're going to be proccing it all the time, and it just adds 55 damage every 0.5 seconds, which is quite a lot of damage. If you buy Siphon bullets early and you look at your damage breakdown, you'll see that it's probably a non-negligible percentage of your damage, and it also steals the life, giving it to yourself, making you much tankier and much harder to kill. Now, if you combine this with the fact that Wraith has an AoE ult that lifts people in the air for 1.75 seconds, and a teleport that allows her to get out of sticky situations, as well as full auto, which destroys buildings in a matter of seconds, you have a character that's just very, very powerful at the moment. Her laning stage got nerfed a little bit, but she's still incredibly strong in the laning stage as well. Let's talk about some items that are highlights for me this patch. The first item is Siphon bullets. Siphon bullets seems very strong, especially on heroes that have a high fire rate, but it seems strong on almost everyone. They only buffed it by 5 max HP, but I believe that that's really all it needed. In fact, I think it was already strong prior to the buff, and I said this, I believe, a couple weeks ago, that the only reason Siphon bullets wasn't purchased more is because other items were overshadowing it. Now that seems to no longer be the case, and I'm seeing a lot of Siphon bullets in my Eternus games, and I think that it's only a matter of time before you guys see Siphon bullets in your games as well. So stay ahead of the curve and start buying Siphon bullets now. You'll see it's very powerful. I think the best heroes for it are Haze, Wraith, Mirage, but I've also bought it on Warden, and I think it's pretty good, and I think there's a bunch of different heroes that can make use of it, so feel free to experiment. That's the beauty of the game. Try buying this on different heroes and see what works. Next on the item list, I want to talk about Spiritual Overflow. This item has been buffed probably for like 7 patches in a row at this point, and I believe that now we're at the point where it's very strong. It gives 35% fire rate when you're shooting, 50 spirit power, 225 bullet shield, cooldown reduction, spirit lifesteal. I mean, at this point, it just gives every stat that's in the game pretty much. And when you buy it, especially on heroes like Wraith that benefit from fire rate and spirit power, it feels just insane. It also feels very insane on another hero, that being Warden, because Warden's fire rate scales from Spirit, and you also get fire rate from Spiritual Overflow itself. So once the item is active, you just gain an insane amount of fire rate with only the item. So I think this item is very strong at the moment. Next on the list is Phantom Strike. Phantom Strike's always been a good item, but I believe it's a little bit more back on the menu now because it's back to giving spirit resistance. For those that don't know, spirit resistance is usually harder to obtain in Deadlock than bullet resistance at the moment. And so spirit resistance is very valuable. They switched Phantom Strike from giving bullet resist to spirit resist, which is overall a buff and makes it feel a lot better to buy. So I've been seeing a lot more people buy Phantom Strike in my games, and I think that it's significantly better than it was, and it was already pretty good. So I think this item is back on the menu, especially if you're playing characters like Abrams or Mo and Krill or things like that. Finally, I want to talk about Cold Front. This item got buffed a lot because they doubled the damage it deals to non-heroes. What that means is that against creeps, against neutrals, it does double the damage. So for example, this small creep right here, if I just use Cold Front, then I can simply just almost insta-kill it, and that's without having any spirit. If I have even a little bit of spirit, then it's, you know, it's going to die very, very fast, if not get one shot. So later on in the game, you can one-shot creep waves with Cold Front pretty much, and it just feels like a very good item to buy, on top of the fact that it gives you some spirit resist, which is always nice. So I've been seeing Cold Front make a bit of a comeback, even though not a lot of people bought it previously. That's it for me, guys. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and if you like this type of content, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and tell me what you'd like to see next. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.